I've made a video like this one before. The central concept was expanding Minecraft Sandbox through dynamic systems. Additional sandbox elements would introduce new paths of creative expression for those who play for the sandbox, the intrinsically motivated. By mechanically incentivizing the use of those paths, we would add vastly more depth for those who play for the game, the extrinsically motivated. If you want an example, take the one already in Minecraft, Redstone. It's highly dynamic, allowing for creative expression, and in multiplayer, it has plenty of practical uses. Mumbo Jumbo is a testament to that. It's the perfect proof of concept, and it's convenient because the redstone philosophy has one hell of a ring to it. Don't you think? But not everyone agreed. Some thought that my suggestions were, quote, not Minecraft. But I would counter, redstone is already in the game, and it's far more complex than the dynamic systems that I suggested. Are people just that scared of change? Well, perhaps not. Minecraft Sandbox appeal is the building. On a small scale, it's very simple. Pick up block, place block. Every block is the same size. Easy, right? But what's so simple about this? Though the mechanic itself is simple, when compounded upon thousands of times over, it becomes extremely complex, like the brushstrokes of a painter's landscape. So is Minecraft simple? Well, yes, but on the larger scale, it has the possibility to become mind-bendingly complex. And I didn't think that it was any different than my dynamic villagers or extensive horse breeding, but it is in one key area. You see, humans have an innate understanding of 3D space and how to manipulate it. We know something that looks good when we see it, but humans do not have an innate understanding of geopolitics or strategy. We weren't built for that. The true difference between Minecraft's core sandbox element, building, and those that abide by the redstone philosophy is accessibility. Name a game more accessible than Minecraft. The very rules are things that we're naturally familiar with, like building and day-night cycles. Otherwise, they're so simplistic that anyone can grasp them, like ores or the movement. Humans do not naturally understand electricity. Well, but a few of us, it's magic, which is why I suppose redstone aficionados are known as wizards. It's the depth, the sandbox potential that makes redstone so attractive. But can we have depth and accessibility at the same time? It's one thing to present a dream like I already have. What we're going to do today is another. We're going to improve Minecraft Vanilla in a reasoned, realistic manner that caters to every player. We're going deeper than bees, but as easy to understand as ores. The problem we face is that many problematic mechanics in Minecraft will never change. I'd love to see a return of survival gameplay, but beds will stay as they are forever. If you think about it, Minecraft seems to abide by the philosophy that to access every distinct challenge, the player must make a distinct choice, like going through a portal or going through a 2-hour trip to find a mansion. If I were to guess, I would say that 95% of worlds are played through without ever fighting a boss or raiding one of the big 3 dungeons. Remove beds and watch as that changes. No distinct choice is made for the sun to go down. By nature, survival gameplay goes against Minecraft's choice for challenge philosophy, so I don't think there will ever be a return to that focus in the mode we have today. Which is all the proof we need that if we're looking to mechanically incentivize building, it can never be through defense, and we are looking to do that. I believe the lack of it is Minecraft's greatest flaw. So if not defense, then what? Logically, farming. Fruit trees, farmer types of crop that grant different effects. It's a very simple idea. It's been done with mods, and in the relaxing setting that is Minecraft, the relaxing activity that is farming doesn't fit any better. I recently watched a video by Like Stories of Old, which suggested a Minecraft world that reacted to the player. For example, rewarding higher ethical animal farming with higher quality food. In 1.18, all livestock involves is a ring of fences. It looks ridiculous and is far from interesting for the player. Now you'd want a watering hole, lots of space, a feeding regiment. You could herd them with wolves or to make feed with redstone. It sends a good message and it's far more involved in the mindless process we have now. On the topic of farming, horse breeding is an idea that I just can't seem to let go. It invites building stables, it's a very accessible process, and it's definitely rewarding. More creatures might be far, so what about certain species that spawn in specific biomes? Another horse that would run very fast, and an ender horse that could periodically teleport. You could bring them both to the overworld, breed them together, and put an enchanted elytra on the fall's back to make a Pegasus. We're not just here to recreate Farming Simulator though. We're gonna village update the village update. Villages shouldn't feel like fixed points in the world. People are people, they're gonna live with you if you can provide. Housing, for example, you can build it and then invite villagers to stay. With the right housing, you can invite villagers with a certain profession. All you need is a best, some space, and a chest. Think Terraria, but more customizable. Unlike Terraria though, we can assign fields to farmers and guard posts to soldiers. You don't need to understand geopolitics to understand the concept of two basic jobs. Through that, you could automate certain functions in your own home, which not only makes it feel alive, but is a good motivation in addition to trading to build for more people than just yourself. The last idea I have is something I hear even Notch wanted in the game. Crafting stations that require physical upgrades. For example, you could only smith armor if you had an anvil next to a workbench. But that's very superficial, let's take it further. To smith diamond tools, for example, you needed a fully equipped blacksmith station, including a filled cauldron, a lava or fire pit, and an anvil in the vicinity of a crafting bench. Ideally, the lack of guidelines and a loose restriction would encourage creativity instead of having everyone to resort to a homogenized design for ultimate efficiency. If you were down in a cave, for example, you could use a lava pool, a hole with some water in it, and an anvil. We don't need to rely on roadblocks either. There could be a chance for increased smithing yield if you had an activation frame around a blast furnace. It'd be a functional industrial smelter. There's plenty more we'll add to crafting over the course of this video, but the framework is set. Now let's turn our eyes down to the mine. I understand that we've gotten a cave update, but it really hasn't changed much about the game. I do actually like the different world generation algorithms, but the actual cave part of the update is honestly quite bad. So I'm going to ignore it for the rest of this video. Mojang will not one-up diamonds. Their supremacy is part of the game's identity, and that will never change. Yes, netherite is a thing, but it's pretty much just diamond. Here's the thing though, there was a time where diamonds were an elusive goal. They were almost magical in their power and integrity, and that's why mining one felt so good. But that was a time where every human wasn't familiar with the game's ins and outs. The magic is, at least for me, gone after I find my first 3 diamonds. From there, I'm only looking for more of the same thing. It's just not as engaging. I want something that reintroduces the magic to mining. Rare diamonds then? The problem with that arises when you look at it statistically. Even if you compensate in some way, you still need diamonds, and due to the rarity, many people will find themselves roadblocked due to a lack of them, and in their boredom and frustration, simply quit. It's not a viable solution. I want a constant sense of hope when mining, even when I have a full set of diamond gear. What about a new resource then? Rarer than diamonds and attractively powerful. Difference is we changed the function. It's an amplifier similar to netherite. A new anvil made from iron and diamonds, or maybe even the smithing table. When combined with this new resource, will allow you to upgrade your gear far beyond what you could have done before. Maybe you could take it down to the enchantment table and use it in place of lapis to supercharge our enchantments. Sharpness 7, looting 4, and infinity squared, which actually gives you arrows. Speaking of arrows, what if I told you that shields and mining are directly linked with one another? And what if I told you that mining being so integral to the experience of the game has prevented its combat system from evolving in significant ways? You'll see. Minecraft certainly isn't a game that needs good combat, although it would benefit from an upgrade all the same. Mojang seems to agree, having made a huge attempt to revive it just a few short years ago. They decided on minor depths such as shields and the need to pace one's attacks. Did that revolutionize combat? Barely, but they made important improvements, shields being the most interesting. If you want to improve Minecraft's combat, the best place to start is reliable ways of avoiding damage. Being able to mitigate the damage from an enemy's attack is a key part of every decent combat system out there, isn't it? Good enemy design only works when their attacks are a challenge, not guaranteed damage. Challenge equals decisions, decisions equal fun, which is why the ability to respond to an enemy's attacks is exactly where Minecraft should look to tap for depth. In fact, imagine we're already there. Imagine you're skilled with a system. Imagine Minecraft is just Dark Souls and you're blocking, dodging, and punishing your enemies downtime. Aside from being good, what's different about how you're playing now and Minecraft's current combat system? You don't have to heal as much, and what else? You're not relying on tanking attacks. You see, the instant a player becomes skilled enough to avoid damage, armor becomes less desirable, as does mining, and with vastly less motivation to mine, you've just gut punched the whole game. A similar effect happens with food. While healing is certainly important in Dark Souls, in Minecraft it's pretty much impossible to live without it. Now you see how important Minecraft's combat system being bad is important to Minecraft as a whole. Shields are a compromise. Timing when to block a skeleton shot so you get the optimum time to punish is fantastic depth. There's a trade-off every time you raise or lower your shield. In this case, shields are a reliable way of avoiding damage. Yes, that reduces the importance of armor, but not by too much, because enemies often come in packs, and when you're surrounded, you're attempting to switch targets trying to block each one's attacks at the right time. For every additional enemy, that gets tougher, and if 2 arrows are shot at the same time, it's impossible. If it's a melee mob, you're pretty much always having to move away from it. It becomes inhumanly hard to block all incoming damage, so armor is still important. So how do we improve Minecraft's combat system without ruining the game? We ruin the game, and then we fix it. I think a good place to look for ideas is Terraria. Its accessible combat has no complexities, rewards aim, screen awareness, and movement like most 2D games, yet it's a blast because enemies' attacks are a challenge. They're telegraphed and they don't track so you can dodge some attacks before they're fired. Otherwise, they take long enough to impact, so you're almost always capable of moving out of the way. Moving and dodging with the game's simple movement mechanics remains the game's most reliable way of avoiding damage. It's extremely accessible and yet deep. Can we do the same in a first-person 3D game? Well, actually, yeah, it's exactly what Doom does, slow-moving projectiles that you can avoid with basic movement. The problem is, Doom's enemies are designed for that. I don't think Notch had Doom in mind back in Alpha. I also don't think that overhauling every enemy type is on the menu. The more realistic approach is this. First, we're adding 2 new ways of reliably avoiding damage. The parry is very self-explanatory. You hit the shield bash button and if you get the timing right, you're rewarded. If it's a ranged attack, it's reversed, just like in Gust, thrown right back at them. If it's melee, the enemy gets stunned, allowing you to punish. Our basis isn't covered yet though, because this still doesn't fix the shield's problem in a group fight. What do we do in any other game with group fights? We dodge. The dash, alas dying light, would probably be a controversial addition, but it accomplishes 2 things. Firstly, even when facing away from an attacker, you can still avoid it. You simply need the skill of timing and situational awareness. The second is a big one. It pops the cork on Minecraft's enemy design. With the dodge, the evoker could be a basic enemy. Attacks beyond simple projectiles and aggressive hugging can exist without being annoying and restricted to the hardest dungeons. Imagine the opportunity for new mobs. Let's keep going. The second layer of depth I'd like to add is an expansion on positioning. Currently, you can position yourself to have a skeleton shoot another mob with an arrow in the back. The dash adds to this since you can make last-minute adjustments. But what can we do better? By charging a parry, you get a shield bash that bounces the target back like it was knockback 4. We can tactically give hoes a use too. In addition to extended range, a hit with the hoe pulls the target towards you. Now we have a level on influence and the positioning of every enemy in very obviously very accessible ways. There's a million things you can do with this. The most obvious one would be using a creeper explosion. To your advantage, you shoot a fire arrow at a creeper, hoe it towards you, raise your shield, and bang. Big risk, big reward. That's what I call crowd control. Dying Light is more like Minecraft than you might think. It's first person, enemies rush straight at you, and the best way of dealing damage is melee. Dying Light showed me that if you want to encourage an aggressive playstyle while fighting the undead, there needs to be a way of controlling the horde rather than letting the horde control you. The importance of positioning. The dash is one way of achieving this. Another is the springboard, the ability to use an enemy as a trampoline for a larger jump, allowing repositioning and a much larger pace of combat. I don't think Minecraft would have trouble with something similar. Make it a timing challenge so it doesn't render zombies useless and treat it like any normal jump. You could parry your 360 no-scope with a crossbow mid-air. There's lots of potential for combining moves for a more efficient effect. There's a lot more depth to be found there. For example, if we have such that any time you bash or pull a mob, it'll damage any other mob it touches and cause aggro, then good positioning can have an effect in almost any group fight. The pull-in in that way acts like Mirror's Edge's grapple. All of these things together provide hundreds of opportunities for positioning to improve combat. We've also given hoes an extra use, and if enemies use shields, Axis would have one too. With minor balances, I think we could have ourselves a combat system that is both deep and highly accessible. But of course, none of that changes the fact that we've now ruined Minecraft. To unruin it, we're going to do 2 things. Firstly, we overhaul shields. In my opinion, the current shield is way too good for the cost. Let's have it follow the same rules as any other tool, material tiers with diamond being the strongest. Something else I've considered is additional inspiration from Dark Souls, where only the strongest shields block all incoming damage. So for example, a wooden shield will only block half of an enemy's attack. Armor becomes more useful more often that way, further soothing the problem. A reliable way of reducing damage instead of avoiding it is still functional with balance because we still have the dash. This will take testing. Regardless, the higher tiers of shield are still desirable because of their durability and so we don't lose our motivation to mine. Secondly, remember that food is a staple of our current combat system. Healing is vital because damage is pretty much guaranteed and we're not going to let it become obsolete. Horses have a stamina bar, now dashes do too. Food grants significantly higher stamina recharge as well as hunger. This should stop dashing from being overpowered, and after reducing the healing of a full hunger bar somewhat, it'll balance food too. With combat sorted, I think it's worth revisiting a Reddit post from 7 years ago, because if we're looking to improve exploration, the insights it delivers are relevant even today. Minecraft suffers from a case of split personality, the adventure half and the construction half. These two halves aren't integrated well, and as a result, Minecraft doesn't live up to its potential as an adventure game. The first 3 days of a survival world are entirely different from everything else that follows. In those first days, everything is a threat and you're on a very tight schedule, scrambling to collect resources before nightfall. It's great, hectic fun. But after you build a base and you reach the iron tier, you're pretty much secure for the rest of the game. That's where the adventure half largely disappears. Why? Because if you want to make anything of note, you need to mine in bulk. If you want to climb the tech tree, you need lots of diamonds. If you want lots of enchantments, you'll have to fight lots of monsters. Theoretically, this is a good thing because it forces you to leave your safe haven to adventure. However, the grind-like nature of the game contradicts that goal because the most effective way to gather things in bulk is to play conservatively. Why adventure in caves when you could get diamonds faster and more safely by going down to Y12 and strip? Mine. Why fight Blazer when you could funnel them into a death trap? Why hunt monsters for XP when you won't get enough without a farm? At this point, survival is a misnomer. The game has become about taming the world and advancing slowly, but surely. Fun, but maybe not for everybody. That's where it ends. There's plenty of things that I disagree with here. Firstly is the fact that the first few nights are a desperate scramble. Not with beds they're not. The first night has been DOA since beta 1.3. Secondly, the use of the word conservatively. It still takes effort to make a monster spawner. Exploitative is the word that I'd use. Instead of interacting with the world in the quote-unquote intended way, you're exploiting the rules for the most efficient game. Legitimate, of course, but perhaps not amazing game design. The point of that post was displaying how Minecraft's imbalances impacts the need for adventure. But adventure is not all that suffers. Why raid an ocean monument when the time and resources are better spent on entities every single time? Why mine iron when you got enough diamonds? Miner systems influence play in very major ways. So we fixed the spawner system by throttling the XP from monster spawner enemies and balance by increasing XP gain from everything else. We fixed the reliance on strip mining with things worth getting and seeing exclusive to caves. We fixed the uselessness of lake aim iron by replacing anvil's experience cost with an iron cost. Fix ocean monuments by upping the rewards. I mean, seriously? Sponge and 8 gold blocks for all that? No, sir. Same deal for woodland mansions, which are by a country mile the most challenging area in the game. Why on earth was it decided that the reward for beating the hardest challenge was an item that can save you from death? That's like training up to fight Arnold Schwarzenegger, all for a protein shake and a 2-pound dumbbell. Entities feel rewarding for what they are, but the fact that they're easier to loot than a glorified leprechaun colony undermines the atmosphere of the end. Most players fight the dragon before looking for a mansion. So, after having saved the world from an extra-dimensional deity, now prepare to fight some men in a house. Come on! For the most part, we can keep the rewards the same, just rebalance the difficulties. The Reddit post goes on to iterate a very interesting insight into one of Minecraft's greatest imbalances. All the places you need to explore are monotone, whereas the places that are interesting to explore are inconsequential to gameplay. Think of it this way. In an average playthrough, you're going to have to hit another fortress and a stronghold. These are extremely similar experiences every single time. What you don't need to explore apart from passing through to get to the stronghold are the biomes. This is where Minecraft's random generation shines. Terrain. But it's all just set dressing. We can look at this imbalance in two ways. A. Minecraft is making you explore the wrong areas, or B. Minecraft is failing to make its dungeon crawling interesting. Is it too much to ask for both? Exploration is a lot like building. It's something humans don't need explained to us. You have to be actually trying to make it inaccessible. Keyword. So let's think about the function. The focus on dungeons isn't necessarily the problem because jungle and desert temples prove that they can encourage exploration of a specific biome. Well, desert temples do at least. They're still a bit too lucrative given how easy they are. Jungle temples, on the other hand, they're certainly not worth heading into a jungle to look for. Fixing that is just a small balancing act. Fixing other structures, though, is a lot more difficult. Entities are good, they provide a very unique challenge. Woodland mansions, strongholds, and other fortresses, on the other hand, they're just corridor stairs and rooms with enemies littered about. I don't think redesigning these from the ground up is the answer because I can't think of ways to do that without fundamentally changing what they are. Revised combat would revive the experience, but for the most part I think we would have to take the mojang approach. Surface level improvements that make them less boring. Those strongholds have potential for much more interesting dangers, like traps, spikes, pits, stuff like that. Generally, those structures ought to improve from their core design, an interesting central mechanic. The biggest issue is that we're playing Minecraft, and being able to literally break the world, you could say, kind of complicates things. But it's not an impossible situation. Woodland mansions disincentivize burning them down by having the rewards burn with it, and cities by making it too dangerous to take any route but the intended one. We don't need to restrict the player as much as ocean monuments, just make it so they have to play by the rules to get to the loot. What about a maze that you can mine through, but more silverfish pop out every time you do? By the 20th block, it's suicide to mine any further. The central idea of the dungeon is that you have to be conservative when mining. You can have a desert dungeon where mining causes sand collapse, or a volcano dungeon that you have to parkour through to escape rising lava, where the walls are made out of obsidian so you can't mine your way out in time. With a wider variety of structures, we can both enrich underground and overworld exploration. All it takes now is a bit of biome exclusivity, and Bob is your uncle. Or is he? Not yet, he's not. Minecraft lacks rewards. There'll come a point where diamonds are just simply useless. And let's be honest, redstone and gold are not even worth mining for most players. Name tags, you'll run out of pets to name. Saddles, you'll amass enough horses. Though I think more interesting enchantments would be fantastic additions to the game, especially on armor, because they'll be useful for even when you aren't taking damage. Enchanting books will also get skill if there's nothing else worth getting. What I have is inspired by both Minecraft and Dark Souls. You see, in Dark Souls your path is not set. From the moment you're dropped into Firelink, there are several paths that you can take, but due to the interconnected world design, that number soon increases dramatically. After a few runs you might think, I want this item so I should go that way, which leads into here and there, then loop around, grab this ring, pull that lever for later, and I'll be set in only an hour. Dark Souls makes exploration a deeply interesting decision-making process. Minecraft cannot mimic handcrafted level design, but it can take inspiration. I want more loot in the form of items that fundamentally alter play. By tying those rewards to biomes, we gain that interesting decision-making progress on spawn. For this playthrough I have this goal, therefore I'm going to look for this biome to grab this item. On your raid you'd pick and choose your biomes based on which have the most relevant loot. It's better still because we've done fixed the first night. No point in the classic 2x1 hole with the door in the front technique if we're not planning to stay 100 meters in front of spawn the whole time. Even if you do, at least you've made a decision. Otherwise you're going to be on the move with a goal in mind, making interesting choices for several nights at least. Let's look at an example. This is where the inspiration from Minecraft comes in, the conduit. At the heart of the sea, which you get from buried treasure chests, and nautilus shells which you get from drowned fishing and trading, you get the conduit. When placed, it allows you to breathe underwater, mine comfortably underwater, and protects you from waterborne enemy mobs, all in a specific radius. It's brilliant. It fundamentally changes aquatic play, and logically you get it from aquatic activity. It forces you to build, it looks sweet, it's everything we need. Apply it to the polar biomes, for example. Here we can get an item that, in a specific radius, stops fire spread, makes it snow, turns water to ice, magnetizes all pickups towards itself, turns you invisible to hostile mobs, can summon a stone sword every 5 minutes, turn mobs against each other, gives you wind to any other location on the map, sends a signal when a hostile mob is nearby, any combination of any of those. There's plenty of potential, the effect simply needs to be rebalanced with the effort it takes. Some of these need to be placed or built up to work. Some of them need to be equipped in a slot, some appeal to intrinsically motivated players, some extrinsic, some both. Either way, if we want it, we have to interact with the biome's features. Polar bears drop one part, another can be found in the secret room of an igloo, and the last hidden under the ice sheets. No one is sleeping on biomes now, especially not the sleeper huts. Link exploration into building with biome-specific fruit trees and crops, which grant additional visual variation and extra motivation to explore and build. Then link it into mining. Biome-specific caves have already been done with mods, but we can do better than icy caves and sandy caves. Provide unique gameplay with iced-over subterranean lakes. They crack and mobs burst out from underneath. Sand can cause collapses after a period of rumbling to war. I also like the idea of biome-specific gemstones. You'd want them because they're pretty, and because in place of lapis, they can influence the enchantments you're likely to get. Amethyst makes sharpness more likely, for example. These would present themselves in the form of crystals instead of ore, because crystal can only be found in caves, thus incentivizing cave diving over shrimp mining, which helps iron out that imbalance. I would say that Bob is now indeed our uncle, but what if we want Fanny to be our aunt? Well, in that case, I think we should be looking to put a thrill into exploration. Danger is a core aspect of practically every good adventure in life or in media. Minecraft is lacking, so we fix it with biomes. I want a volcano biome, a polar biome, so polar that it's in a permanent blizzard. I want quicksand, I want ice sheets to crack. I want predatory animals, poison fruit, poison trees, ones that make it harder to move in a specific direction at the peaks of the highest mountains. Let me roleplay Ernest Shackleton. That's exploration covered for the most part, but there is one last thing that I have to address, and it's a big one. God damn it, we need a new dimension. It doesn't have to be as in-depth as the Aether, but it does have to be an answer to one of Minecraft's worst extrinsic flaws. The hardest part of the Ender Dragon fight is getting there. After that, you can get more powerful, but to what end? A new dimension is without question the smartest way to provide an endgame experience without poorly ripping off Terraria. No one is asking for bosses after the Moonlord, so don't assume we'll be stuck in a cycle of people beating the hardest challenge and then asking for something harder. Everyone is different, but for those reasonably experienced with games, the Ender Dragon simply isn't a satisfying challenge, and it never really has been. It's not tough enough to warrant grinding gear. All you really need is a stack of ladders and decent aim. And hey, this finally gives Mojang with an opportunity to follow through on the Sky Dimension. I think that's a good place to end it, my realistic improvement for Minecraft. I hope you all enjoyed this long coming video. There's actually a reason why I haven't uploaded in a while. I hope I can make more constant uploads now that this project is over with. This is my longest video to date, and if you made it to the end, I sincerely thank you and ask you for any feedback that you may have. Thank you for watching, and until next time, enjoy your stay.